Okay, good morning everyone. You're very welcome to our Foundation Project webinar, which will focus on policy supports for industrial resilience. We're delighted to have over 100 people in attendance or register with us this morning, and those are predominantly, I suppose, from our region, partner region countries, other European countries, but we also have people with us from the US, Saudi Arabia and Botswana this morning. So it's great that we're sharing the messages with all of you, and we're delighted to have you here. So my own name is John Hobbs and I'm a lecturer in the Cork Institute of Technology. I work in the V-Link research group, which coordinates and participates in a number of different European projects related to competitiveness, innovation and industry clustering. I'm sure you're all going to benefit from the presentations we have across all the different corners of Europe. Our presenters will share with you policies, initiatives and programs aimed at supporting industry and building resilience in their regions, which I'm sure is going to be of increased importance to you as we battle COVID-19 across Europe. Each of these regions are working hard in terms of getting business back open and helping those who have lost their jobs to get back working. And I'm delighted that they can all join us this morning to share that with you. So next slide, please. So in terms of a little background on the Foundation project, the whole premise of this particular project in the first instance was if there was a large employer that was going to exit a region, so for some unforeseen circumstance or for something that's been planned for a while, 500 to 5,000 jobs could be lost overnight in regions. And we've seen that happen previously, and that has a huge impact on the workforce in that particular organization, but also the local supply chain that feeds into that organization. And when you include that, I suppose, with the multiplicative effect of the salaries and other local services that are connected to that industry, that's hugely that's a huge hit to particular regional economies. And this project is all about building a roadmap or a framework for what happens if that worst case scenario comes into fruition, and what do we do as a region to help those people get back into employment and to replace that hole in our own regional economies. And it was fantastic that Interreg Europe funded this project, looking into something that hasn't happened already, but that may happen, and something that we wanted to prepare for as partner regions. I suppose 6 months after the project was funded, along came the coronavirus, and that has had a huge impact on our project, the same as it had on all of your lives and all of your regional economies as well. So we had to pivot and change, I suppose, a little bit about what the project can do. And we've been trying now to refocus on supporting SMEs in this absolutely critical time and getting people back to work. So by sharing messages from across our partner regions that can maybe inspire or help other regions to take small lessons from there. So our next slide, please. So the overall goal of the Foundation project is to allow our partner regions and stakeholders understand the various transitions and transitions that our regional economies have come through in the past. So for example, Ulu had a big closure in Nokia, and we're learning from them about how that transformation has happened and how their IT sector is now booming and stronger than when Nokia was at its height. In terms of, I suppose, the overall project, we're just trying to make sure that through learning and sharing via workshops, study visits, stakeholder meetings and seminars, we can understand a little bit more about what's happening in each of the partner regions and build action plans that help us to support what happens in this instance if we lose a large employer, or now, I suppose, the crisis that we're facing with the COVID-19 pandemic. So next slide, please. So in terms of our agenda for today, we're already in the middle of my short introduction. So we have a number of presenters with us from across Europe, as I mentioned. So we have Alison from Ireland, Jane from Finland, Marek from Poland, Carlos from Spain, Werner from Austria, and they're going to present a sort of 5-minute intervention on the good practices from their region, just to really whet your appetite and show you what's involved. And after they've presented their little piece, we'll have a moderated Q&A where you, the audience, can ask questions of the presenters, and we can have a little bit of interaction and discussion. And I'll share with you how that interaction happens in a moment. After that, then we'll have four more presentations from Phil in the UK, Inga in Lithuania, Adrian who's in Hungary, and Rita from Italy. And they'll share some of the good practices that they've been using to get people back on their feet and back working and keep businesses open. So after that, again, we'll have a short Q&A for those four presenters, after which we'll have just some conclusions and tell you a little bit more about the foundation project and our plans for the future. So in terms of our audience participation, on our next slide, how you can get involved and how you can ask your questions today. There's primarily two different ways in which you can ask your questions. The first way is via Twitter. So our Twitter account is @foundation_EU. Please follow us. Please ask your questions on there. And Dave, who's based in Oldham, will be on there this morning, answering those as best he can, or popping them on to me for the Q&A session. The other option is actually via the software that we're using at the moment, and there's a Q&A function on the top right of your screen. So you just click on that little box up there and you can post a question. It would be absolutely ideal if you could give your name and where you're based and which presenter you want to ask that question to. So that would be superb. And then Judith from Grupo Dex, who's helping out with the project management and support from that perspective, she's going to be moderating those Q&As. So any of the questions that you do ask this morning will be published. And if Judith can't answer them herself, she'll pop them into the live feed for us, and we'll be able to put them to the presenters for you. Okay, so that's enough of hearing from me. So at this point, I'm going to ask for our next slide, and I'm going to ask Alison from the Rubicon Centre in Cork, Ireland, to take over for her intervention. So over to you, Alison. You might just unmute your microphone and away you go.
Thanks, John. Good morning. So, as John's mentioned, my name is Alison Walsh. I'm based in the Rubicon Centre, which is in Cork Institute of Technology. And the Rubicon Centre is an incubator for early stage startups and other small companies who are based on campus with us in the Rubicon Centre. Next slide. So I manage a program called the New Frontiers program. It is a program to develop entrepreneurs' capability and accelerate businesses who have a desire to grow internationally and also have strong growth potential. Next slide, please. So it is a national programme that is funded by Enterprise Ireland, and Enterprise Ireland is the Irish state agency with responsibility for supporting Indigenous small and medium enterprises who have a desire to grow and scale internationally and create employment. So the main purpose of the programme is to help develop new businesses and also to support the entrepreneurs who have early stage business ideas and who want to grow their own capability as founders. So it was founded in 2012, and it has several different elements as to how the programme is constructed. So I'm the programme manager, and we have a team of people who actually work with me to deliver the programme. And the primary element of the programme is phase 2, which is a full-time programme where the founders are based in the incubator with us for 6 months, and they undertake interactive group workshops, but they also get supported through one-to-one mentoring and training. And the ultimate aim at the end of the 6 months is that they will have grown some sales, they will have a hopefully minimal viable product, and they will have an investor ready business plan created. Next slide, please. So to understand what the resources involved in putting together a program like this, each of the companies, through their support from Enterprise Ireland, it receives a tax-free monthly stipend of €2,500. So most of them will have €15,000 in support, and some who are particularly in need of funding and who have a very strong project idea couldn't get an additional €7,500 of this tax-free stipend. It's a grant that's provided through Enterprise Ireland. So we provide office space for the entrepreneurs for 6 months while they're there with us. And then we use both internal team members and also some external individuals who help to mentor and support and provide training across finance, business planning, marketing, sales, product development, and also the mindset of an entrepreneur and how an individual can actually be best placed to move forward with a new business idea. So we have had over 110 startups go through the programme. They're currently employing over 600 staff, and we have a very strong survival rate for the companies who participate in the programme. Typically, they go on to get additional state funding and sometimes some angel investment. And as you can see from the figures there, we've had some significant success in the funding that's been won by the companies involved in the programme. So the programme, as I said, began in 2012, and it runs in the Rubicon Centre each year from September until March. And those participants are based full-time with us over the course of the programme. Next slide, please. So it's run in 14 locations across the country, and the total support package that we put in place, which values both the training and the mentoring, we value at about €30,000 of a monetary value for each participant that they benefit from. So they get an opportunity to work with like-minded individuals. So they're in a supported environment, which is very entrepreneurial and very innovative. And oftentimes there is collaboration and partnerships that form as a consequence of them being on the programme. The production of a very strong business plan is extremely important as one of the key outputs of the programme, because it allows them to be in a position to actually approach the investor market and to see whether or not they can raise funding which will support their future growth. So I'm happy to take questions whenever the session moves to the Q&A session. Thanks, John.
Thanks very much, Alison. So we just move on to our next presenter, Janne, and as I was mentioning earlier, we'll have a short Q&A when we have our first 5 presenters have given their sort of intervention. So we'll just pop over to Janne and his video will go live, and over to you, Janne.
Thank you, John, and good morning, everyone. Greetings from Finland, and thanks for this great opportunity to share some learnings from how a regional agency can support rural SME companies with their internationalization. Yeah, my name is Janne and I work for agency called NIHAC. I have some 20 years of experience about internationalization of the companies, both being as an entrepreneur and as a worker for national and regional business development organizations. Briefly about my employer, NIHAC. It's a regional non-profit business development agency in Finland, and it covers 5 municipalities, and those have roughly 2,500 companies, out of which maybe 20% are in the international business. So the introduction to the presentation is that how an agency like ours can support rural SME companies with their export activities. As we know, small rural companies, they often have excellent products and even strong know-how in their own specialty field, but they might not have contacts to international markets and or understanding how to reach them. Background information, Finnish domestic market is relatively small and the companies need to go out quite early. The geographical distances are long, but luckily the digital networks are decreasing the distances. And aim of our operations is to lower the threshold of internationalization of rural SMEs. And this is done, for example, by peer network and shared marketing activities. Next slide, please. So the role of the export promotion organization, in this case NIHAC, is firstly to be a trusted partner for the companies or even a sparring partner who challenges the company in the planning phase, for example, their internationalization plan, their market selections, their way how they are building their sales channels. And secondly, the more operative role is that we are a facilitator who enable the matchmaking between the company and the relevant opportunities worldwide. Next slide, please. Yeah, this one, thanks. And so in NIHAC, we have had continuously export promotion programs a bit more than 10 years in a row now. Altogether, 6 programs, total budget 3.4 million, and a very rough breakdown of the budget could be so that the half of the budget is for the personnel cost and other half for co-marketing activities. Of course, it's always difficult to measure the impact of the intermediator, but we believe that there is some evidence of success. We have served more than 300 companies, and the number of participants in each project have exceeded what was budgeted. Secondly, the participated companies, they have joined the following new programs, which most probably shows that they received value because they are ready to invest more, and more than half of the companies within the region are involved in these international programs. Next slide, please. And I conclude with the key learnings. I believe that the key success factors are that there is a trusted facilitator who builds a neutral platform that has 3 key elements. And first of all, deep understanding of the local offering, meaning both the needs of the single companies, but also the potential for joint offerings. And to become the trusted partner, I think that the team of the agency need to have the certain credibility. Secondly, you need to have a global network who provides the company's tangible business opportunities. And for that, you need to have the contacts, quite attractive offering, and certain visibility in the markets. And then you need to have the ways to match the offering with the opportunity. Of course, this in the future, this is done more and more on the digital platforms, maybe not needing always physical meetings. And I believe that those companies who have a strong digital presence, they can compete better against the local players. And if I conclude with the key challenge here is that, first of all, to understand that going international, it's a process. And secondly, it's also an investment, which takes time and resources. So this requires certain long-term thinking, both from the companies, but also from the support organizations. That's the last slide. Thank you very much for listening. I'm more than happy to hear your feedback and also try to answer your questions, if any. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Janne. That's great. And I'll just remind the audience as well, don't forget to have a look at the Q&A function up the top. I'm sure Alison and Janne have you asking some questions, and please feel free to interact with us there on that live Q&A, and Judith will be back to work with you. So I'd like to now invite Marek from Poland to make his intervention. So Marek, over to you.
So thank you very much. Hello everyone. My name is Marek Duda. I'm from Rzeszów Regional Development Agency from Poland. Exactly from Podkarpackie region. It is southeast of Poland, bordered with Slovakia and the Ukraine. And I will have opportunity to tell you in a few words about special programs from regional operational program of Podkarpackie region in order to decrease negative impact of COVID-19 for our region. So please, next slide. So first, special instrument are liquidity loans for enterprises. So it's a result of extraordinary call in our operational program. And the budget of this project is 9 million euros. The implementation of the project has started at the beginning of February 2020 and will last until the end of the 2020. It's run by Rzeszów Regional Development agency, and main aim of this instrument is to supporting affected by COVID-19 companies by special liquidity loans. Next slide, please. Yes, the amount of loan for one enterprises is 150,000 euro, and enterprises had to pay off this loan within 6 years, and there is 6-month withdrawal grace period. Each enterprises needs to show their expenses. Next slide, please. The next special instrument from regional operational program are liquidity grants for small businesses from our Podkarpackie region. It's also extraordinary call. The budget of the project is 12 million euros, and it will start, implementation of this project will start at the beginning of July and will last until the end of the year. It's also run by our agency, and main objective of the project is very similar to this loans liquidity, but it's grants supporting enterprises affected by COVID-19, but only micro and small one. This company which hired maximum 49 people. Next slide, please. Amount of the grants depends on how many people enterprise hired. For one worker, it's 6,000 euro grant. So if somebody hire 20, they can multiply 6,000 euro by how many people they hired. It's non-refundable lump sum. So enterprises hasn't showing expenses. Next slide, please. And we have got also different instruments for different groups. It's 2 examples. One directed for hospitals. It's for purchasing medical equipment and disposable items. And the second one for people recovered from COVID-19, also some special program. Please, next slide, because it's the end. Thank you from my side. And if you have got any question, please don't hesitate to ask. Thank you very much.
Marek, thank you very much for that. So now I'll ask Carlos to unmute himself, and we'll pop onto your first slide, Carlos. So over to you.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much for this invitation. I'm Carlos Miras from the Info Murcia. We are the Regional Development Agency of Murcia in Spain. I'm going to talk about the Speed Up program. Next slide, please. Speed Up program is a training and a mentoring program for entrepreneurs. And we know that there is a lot of programs similar of this, but we think that the main difference is what we focus on high skills professionals. And this professional has been hit by the economic crisis. And so what we look for is to help them to have a reinvention opportunity. Next slide. In 2012, one of the main sectors hit by the crisis was the construction sector, not only in Murcia, also in Spain. At the same time, this sector employee a wide variety of high-skilled professionals. And the Regional Murcia also launched a strategic plan for entrepreneurs to support them and promote them. And this plan has 3 axes: promotion of the entrepreneurial spirit in society, support for the creation and consolidation of company, and coordination of entrepreneurial support system. So what we look for, the main objective of this program, of the Speed Up program, was to increase the skills and give to the participant the opportunity to reinvent. So for this purpose, the participant attend group individual session to learn different methodologies and get in touch with the entrepreneurship system, such as business angels, a scientific park, business innovative center. The Speed Up program has managed by the Regional Development Agency, supporting in local authorities, national authorities, and college and club of professionals. Next slide, please. And you don't really need a large investment to do this program. This program duration is over 10 weeks, and the total cost is over 50,000 euros. And we have some evidence of successful of this program. In 2012, this plan to support entrepreneurs have obtained the European Entrepreneurial Region distinction, and we have such a good result as 200 participants. We have been collaborating with more than 20 professional colleges. We have a recognized brand. And the first edition of this Speed Up program was on March 2012, and right now we are in the 8th edition. It is a non-edition because of the crisis right now. Next slide, please. So I think it's quite easy to replicate because, as we said before, you don't need a large investment. Also because we think that unemployment and reinvention opportunity also happen in high-skilled people, not only in low-skilled people. For sure, we have some difficulties. You're going to have some difficulties. You're going to implement this plan, but you can resolve it. The things that we found that was the difficult to coordinate different stakeholders, and also the low motivation in the participant because of the personal situation. And so that's next slide, please. That's all I want to talk about this program. If you have any question, please do it.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Carlos. I see there's some questions coming in already about the program, but we're going to move to Werner, and we'll have his intervention, and then we'll come back to the Q&A session. So Werner, I think you're joining us from the mountains. It's great to have you. So over to you.
Of course. Thank you, John, and thank you for the opportunity to speak here a little bit about what we do and what we did. So next slide, please. Well, in Austria and in Upper Austria, we were experiencing a period of quite a lot of growth in the last 10 years. Back at this. And in fact, for the last few years, we were actually facing quite a lack of skilled labor in our region. So we had a real good plan in order to attract foreign talent, especially IT talent and stuff. And we had a lot of programs enabled there in place. Well, and then the COVID crisis hit us, and within weeks we went from record employment to record unemployment, as many regions did. So just like Mike Tyson said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth, and that was actually what happened here in Upper Austria, as it did in many regions. Next slide, please. So what we did from Business Upper Austria and from Clusterland Upper Austria, Austria and the region of Upper Austria, as many regions did in Europe in this crisis, they actually put out massive Corona emergency packages, more than 40 billion, what the state of Austria did. And we, as the regional development agency, more or less got a mandate from the regional government, not just for the cluster members, but for the whole companies, to actually help and assist them in order to obtain this kind of funds, to obtain liquidity in this period. And what we did, maybe a little bit in contrast to other agencies and other organizations, we not just were sitting in our offices or home offices and waiting for companies to call us, but we actually were calling the companies. So we picked up the phone and we're actively getting and reaching out to our companies in order asking them whether they needed any help to obtain this kind of funds or whatever they needed. And this was actually a quite good reason, and it was very highly welcome by the companies. And so far we are serving more than 3,000 companies on this issue. Next slide, please. what we did also to mobilize resources in our region to produce and manufacture personal protective equipment, as you see on those pictures. For example, we had companies that were using testing equipment. That was actually machinery companies, but they were allowing and providing testing equipment to produce textiles, or we had projects in our clusters going on developing this kind of face masks or face shields. And we realized that the existing networks and clusters helped a lot in order to switch manufacturing capabilities and resources in times of a crisis to what is actually needed within actually weeks. And we saw that the existence of networks helped really to work there a lot. Next slide, please. But that was more or less the emergency reaction, what we did. What is essential for us, and we think that this crisis will last in the form of a economic crisis, or we hope not, but we cannot really say that it's not going to happen, a financial crisis, that competition on world markets, and our economy relies 2/3 on exports, will get tougher. So what we are doing right now, and actually will probably do within the next few years, to try to, what we've been doing for the last 20 years, try to increase competitiveness through collaborative innovation. I'm aiming for 150 collaborative innovation projects per year, again starting this year, because as competition is increasing on a worldwide scale, there is more importance and more stress on the issue of differentiating yourself through innovation. And I think we can succeed there only in aligning and getting those companies together in this kind of innovative, collaborative efforts. And I think we have a good track record there. And what we've been doing for the last 20 years is even more essential and important for the years to come. And that's where we are mobilizing our resources right now for the future and for the next few years. That's more or less what I wanted to share with you, and I'm happy to answer any questions that there are. Thanks a lot.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Werner. So on our next slide, we have our Q&A session, and we have an opportunity, I suppose, to ask questions of our first 5 presenters that we've heard from there briefly. So thank you all very, very much for staying on time. It's a massive help, and we're actually running perfectly on time now. So I have a number of questions that have come in actually via email and over the Q&A. But the first one that I have is for it's for Alison, and it's about it's from Regina in Hungary from PBN, and she's wondering about the eligibility requirements for the New Frontiers program, how they work, and how long does an entrepreneur receive support. So maybe Alison, you could pop in and answer that question for us.
Thanks, John. Happy to answer the question. So we put out a call for entrepreneurs to come and apply for the program. And in the first instance, they expressed their interest on our website or through the National New Frontiers website. So once they've done this, they then do what we describe as a speed pitch, which is a 5-minute pitch to a panel of experts to decide whether or not they're suitable to go forward for the next stage, which is an interview of 30 minutes. We have a panel combined of representatives from the Rubicon Centre, but also our funding agency, Enterprise Ireland. And we have strict criteria around how a participant is suitable, and they get awarded a point scoring system across 6 different criteria. So just to give you an idea of that, we judge founders' capability, how committed to engage in the program they are, and how growth orientated their business idea is. We score them on how innovative the business idea is and how likely it is to trade internationally. We have a score around the uniqueness of their value proposition and whether or not they can show clear evidence of a commercial market for their product or service. So it's a scoring criteria so that we have an opportunity to compare the strength of each of the candidates as they come forward. We have spaces for 14 candidates each year, and the entrepreneurs receive their stipend on a monthly basis, and it's tax-free, so they get €2,500 per month when they get a place on the programme.
Very good. Thanks a million, Alison. Really appreciate that. I have another question here from David in Barcelona. It's for Janne, and he's wondering, how do you see the current challenges affecting the SME export program? So Janne, maybe you'd be able to unmute and you could take that question.
Yeah, thanks. Very good question. And actually, I have been working with the number of SMEs currently during the Corona times. Of course, the starting point was maybe that you cannot make business, especially with the new customers, if you don't meet the customers. But I think that it took like 2 months, and already in May we were witnessing that companies who had a product that can be taken into use without the physical meeting, they can do business also through this kind of a virtual collaboration. In the longer term, I think that there has been an era of platforms already for a while, for years, and this kind of two-sided platforms, that's also aim of our current project, to develop that kind of a platform. So I think that this actually relatively, this is it's bad to say, but it's good for those companies who don't have that much resources, that they can be on the platforms where they don't need to spend that much of resources. I don't know if that answered to your question at all.
No, that's perfect. Thanks very much, Janne. And just have another question here that's come in on the live Q&A. It's from Dave in Oldham, and it's for Marek. Did the development agency have any influence in the design of the call for projects from the operational program, or was it designed only by the managing authority? So Marek, perhaps you might be able to unmute and we can move to you for an answer to that. Yes,
so it's my answer. So I can say, because we are as a part of Marshall Office, because Marshall Office, managing authority of regional operational program, is the owner of agency. So it's, for us, it's much easier to contact with them and to create the best solution for enterprises, especially that we have got everyday contact with them, and we can create together the best solution, the best help, and the best kind of support. So we did it together, managing authority and our agency as the institution which implement these instruments. Very good. Okay, and there's a question here for Carlos from Louise, and she's wondering about, I suppose, the program. What types of sectors has the program supported over time? So maybe you'd come in to answer that one, Carlos. I know you mentioned it's about sectors that are struggling, but what are the types of sectors that it is impacted on today?
Well, the main sector when we began was the construction sector, because it was a sector that employ a lot of people, a lot of different skills of people. But also we were working with other sectors as tourism also. But as I say, the construction sector was the mainly. Okay, and is there plans to move that out to other sectors, or? Yeah, we can move. At the end, you can move this methodology to another sector with no problems. Perfect. Okay, and just the final question, I suppose, of this
session, and we'll come back to it after some more interventions from our other partners, is for Werner, and it's from Marek in Poland, who's actually here with us on the call too. But what are the most important problems that enterprises are facing after the coronavirus? So presently, I suppose, what are the most important things that companies are facing in Austria?
Well, the most important thing is, of course, that sales are way behind what they were expected to. And even companies like machinery, equipment manufacturers, that still have no short labor, and they're still manufacturing a lot because they had quite high intake of orders in the last few years. They do not get significant or any new orders. So the problem is that companies don't really know when sales, and we are talking about international sales, since 2/3 of our GDP is derived from exports, will go strong again. And this is actually something where no one and no government, no agency whatsoever can actually help those companies if they don't sell anything, and if order intake is down. Well, that's tough.
Very good. Okay, there's actually a follow-up sort of question coming for you, Werner, on the Q&A from Kevin in Cork, and he's just wondering about, I suppose, your view on reaching out to businesses, and probably coming from a clustering background, it's of interest to hear your take on this. But he's wondering, is it the support agencies have to initiate the contact with businesses, or is it the businesses themselves that come to you?
Well, it's both, actually. Companies, if they need anything, they are reaching out to us. Out of those 3,000 contacts, about 500 of them were companies calling us. But on the other side, 2,500 were contacts where we were reaching out to the companies and offering them advice, which was very, very valuable for them, because they know, and they got the impression there is someone there who cares and is offering actively help on their behalf.
Very good, very good. Are there any of our other presenters would like to jump in on that one in terms of who's initiating the contact from? Is it coming from the development agency, or is it coming from the firms themselves? Janne, any perspectives from Finland, or Alison maybe?
Yeah, thanks, John. In our case, when we have been there in place and offering the internationalization services already for 10 years. Actually, we have a privilege to enjoy the fact that companies know us and they come to us. But of course, with the new companies who haven't been there, it's sales work from our side. We need to meet the customers, try to reach them through digital channels and so on.
Okay. Alison, maybe you want.
Yeah, a bit similar to what Janne had said. We do a combination of an approach on social media, reminding people of the skill set that we have and how we can support businesses who are struggling. We've also taken ads in the press to remind people that they can call and dial an expert around the COVID crisis particularly. And then for entrepreneurs who have early stage business ideas, they tend to be aware of the programs that we run, and they tend to reach out to us. So it's a kind of a combination of both inbound and outbound.
Very good. What about Carlos? Are you there? Have you any perspectives on that, Carlos, from Murcia in Spain?
Really, the first edition of this program was a demand of an association of architects. That was the first time, and then we think that it was working. So as I said, the first time was a demand, but then we start doing by ourselves.
Very good, very good. Okay, at this point, folks, I'm going to move on to the second half of our presentations. So we're going to move on to our next slide, and I'm pleased that after some technical difficulties, Phil has been able to join us. So Phil, hopefully you'll be able to unmute yourself, and over to you.
Hi, good morning, everybody. At long last, I've managed to get access. Good morning, my name is Philip Hargreaves. I'm Head of Access to Finance at GC Business Growth Hub, which is an organisation of about 170 staff, funded typically through the European Union and by the local authorities to provide business support to SMEs in Greater Manchester. We're really pleased to be working with Oldham Metropolitan Borough Council to develop and deliver a range of resilience support measures, and that originally focused around Brexit. But as you can imagine, as the COVID-19 pandemic took hold, we needed to repurpose and build upon those actions to support the business base. Next slide, please. So just we set up a range of support mechanisms under the global title of Here for Business, and on this slide I've just shown you a few of those examples. I'm going to talk about some of the larger ones as we go through the slides, but we help businesses to develop personal protective equipment, to either source that or manufacture that. We help businesses to engage with staff where they needed to engage with staff. We help businesses to develop and promote local supply chains because international or national supply chains had deteriorated, and we opened our offices on a 24/7 basis to speak to SMEs who were going through a crisis, as you can imagine. Next slide, please. So I just want to talk about three of the core initiatives, and one of them is called Project Mercury, and it kind of talks to the question which came around a few minutes ago, and that's about an outreach to 25,000 SMEs in Greater Manchester. There are about 105,000 SMEs, and we set up an outbound telephone process with 40 staff seconded onto the project to really engage with businesses and help them to understand what was available from a government and local perspective to support them through the COVID-19 pandemic, and particularly through the lockdown process. And just to comment upon that previous question, we specifically chose not to engage with businesses that were already aware of us or had engaged with us, but to speak to businesses who typically don't engage or are not aware of the things that we do. So we've spoken to around 11,500 businesses so far, and whilst we're in supporting the lockdown phase, we're going to soon move towards a recovery period looking at strategy and resilience, cash flows and staffing, etc. Next slide, please. As part of that, we've also developed internally a COVID-19 survey built around businesses, and it's the largest single piece of data collection feeding back into government. So far, we've engaged with more than 3,200 businesses since March 2020 to understand what measures are impacting them through the COVID-19 pandemic. A few details there. Obviously, 71% have seen a catastrophic decrease in sales. 33% of those businesses at one part or another have had serious cash flow issues and will continue to have serious cash flow issues, and 56% of the staff that we've engaged with are furloughed staff. So that means that they've put them on to move them away from working in their organisations and to take access of the government furloughing scheme. Next slide, please. And as a final piece, we help businesses to access a broad range of government schemes. I think there are about 20 schemes which government brought into focus from a financial perspective around coronavirus business interruption loan schemes, bounce back loans, cash flow forecasts, local authority grants. So we've provided a broad brush support mechanism to a range of businesses to help them to understand how they can access those schemes and to make sure they can make best use of those schemes, to make sure that they can access the cash and the support they need to protect their own businesses and help them to move forward. And I guess the next phase of the interactions that we've got will be as businesses come out of lockdown, as they begin to take staff back onto the payroll, as they begin to look for new markets and sales. Next slide, please. And just to say thank you, I'm more than happy to answer any questions as they come up during the next session. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Phil, for that. Short, sharp, and to the point. That's excellent.
Good.
So next we have Inga from Enterprise Lithuania, who's going to speak to us. So Inga, if you unmute yourself, and we'll pass it over to you.
Okay, thank you, John. Hello to everyone. I am very happy to be here today online with you. and I'm ready to share our experience. My name is Inga Jozapavichine. I am leading the entrepreneurship department at Enterprise Lithuania, and we can start my presentation. So please, next slide. Okay, as long as we remember, the world stopped during the pandemic crisis, and actually everything has been locked down. And we started to think what to do right after the quarantine has been announced in Lithuania. We needed to help our SMEs to survive and for sure to be successful on the internet. That was the main task. And the next slide, please. As long as we remember, physical stores, they're closed, and that's true that some Lithuanian businesses still didn't have some very good e-shops or still have been lacking good digital skills to develop a successful e-shop and to be successful on the internet. And how we did it, that's the main question. We started to create a database as a virtual shopping center for all e-shops, and we started to work with business digitalization skills. We started to assist them to create an e-shop and to be successful on the internet. And for sure, we looked for many partners to provide special discounts or free services for e-shops, because we know very well that that was a difficult time and we needed to save money. So we worked with many stakeholders, that mean SMEs, e-commerce experts, strong companies, business professionals as a partners, and we have been supported by our Ministry of Economy and Innovation. And the next slide. Okay, all the time we are talking about the resources. So we started as a small team of 5 members working without limits of working hours, and we involved communication agency to assist because we needed to attract e-shops to come to our platform and also to work with the customers to go to the internet and to buy. Also, we needed some additional financial resources. So how to measure our success? And all the time we like everything what we can measure. So what did we reach? That means during 3 months, right after 3 months, actually, we have already 1,200 e-shops on our platform. And that's good that 10% of them are completely new ones, e-shops, that means that we help them to be established and to come to our platform. We have a strong network of the e-mentors, and we still are working with online webinars to improve business e-commerce skills. And still we have more than 25 special offers for our e-shops from our different partners, still to save money. And the next slide. So what we can share, what is potential for the learning. So, you know, going through this way, we know very well how to create a network of e-mentors and how to support businesses with the needed skills. We know how to create the value propositions for e-shops, because the question why to come to the platform, it's all the time is valid. How to create such kind of website and platform, and the good practice in communication with different stakeholders. That we can share with everyone. And did we meet any challenges? Honestly, yes, a lot. We didn't have time to think because we started our initiative right after the quarantine has been announced. That means the first week of the quarantine. And we needed, as usually, human and financial resources, but we did with the same what we had before. And we needed to build a united community, because all we stakeholders that I have already mentioned, they have been working for the same wonderful task to help SMEs to survive and to be successful on the internet. And now we are facing a new challenge, how to be good and what to do in the future and to continue the initiative, because internet and digitalization is the future, is our future actually. And the next slide, and it's time to say thank you. and I'm ready to answer any questions if I know the answer. And thank you very much for your attention.
That's great, Inga. Thanks very much. And the questions are coming in now on our Q&A, folks, so that there's plenty of those coming anyway for our presenters. I'll just hand over now to Adrian, and hopefully you can unmute yourself and you will be able to take over from your first slide there. Just try unmute there again, Adrian, sorry.
Okay, hello.
Good morning.
Do you hear me? Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Adrian Boccani, and I'm the Economic Councillor of Szombathely City with County Rights. Next slide, please. I will be talking to you about our Szombathely Start program, which on the one hand, with it, we would like to support our citizens in their socially difficult situation, while on the other hand, we would like to restart and accelerate our economy with it after the COVID-19 pandemic situation, which had truly negative effects on our multinational companies and also on our service sector. Next slide, please. When we were developing this program, we have made it together with the most important stakeholders of our city. Okay, so for example, our most important multinational companies, our municipal institutions and businesses, our local universities, the Chamber of Commerce and Industry, etc. And while we were defining our key focus or key intervention areas, we have made it in two big thematic areas. The one is the social assistance benefits, which means different types of financial subsidies for the dismissed labor force during the COVID-19 pandemic situation. And the other one is a truly economic restart program, which has three pillars: the buy local, the be online, and the spend wisely. In buy local, we have developed a great market voucher program, and also we have improved the relationship between our multinational companies and our local suppliers. In Be Online, we have offered different types of financial and non-financial supports for our SMEs to go online, for example, free web pages, web shops, and a free online invoicing software. And in Spend Wisely, we have offered different allowances for our SMEs, for example, rent allowance, public space usage fee discount, and the possibility of discounted advertising in our municipal media. Next slide, please. The Restart program is a still ongoing program. We have started it in April 2020. For the social benefits, we have allocated 1.4 million euros and €500,000 to the entrepreneurial actions. 50% of the allocated budget have already been spent for our social actions and 40% for the entrepreneurial activities. Some concrete measurements: 3,213 people have requested a financial subsidy for dismissed labor force in the value of €300 per person. 1/3 of them have already got it at current processing. 558 people got the market voucher in the value of €100 per person. 44 SMEs has applied for rental allowance and 16 for public space usage fee discount. Next slide, please. While implementing the Restart program, we have faced several challenges. Of course, we had to manage the tension due to an absolutely unprecedented epidemic event. We had to have a lot faster reaction time, consequent messages, and an absolutely reinforced representation in the online media world. And of course, our most crucial problem was our financial problems. We had huge losses of our municipality incomes, and because of this, we have to invent new strategies, new prioritization, and we had to reallocate our funds. For example, in order to make this a restart program, we had to reallocate some of our funds from older constructions to the restart program. And what could be a potential for learning? For you, we had to learn ourselves how to manage social demands on the one hand, and support for the entire ecosystem on the other hand from a relatively limited funding pool. And we also had to learn, and it was a great experience, to learn how a municipality could play a coordinative role between the most important stakeholders of our city. What happened here? I'm hearing someone else as well. But I'm just finishing my presentation. We also had the opportunity to learn that with one form of support, we can target multiple actors at the same time. A good example for it was our Market Watcher program. Next slide, please. And I just would like to thank you for your attention, and for more and further information, please do not hesitate to ask me or contact me later as well. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Adrian. So we'll have those questions now shortly. We have one last speaker. That's Rita from Italy, and she's just going to join us now. So over to you, Rita.
Yes, thank you, John. I'm Rita Piccinini from at the Innovation Park for the Municipality of Reggio Emilia. I'm going to present the Good Practice Workers Buyout, which is owned actually by Lega Coop Emilia Ovest, which is a business association of a cooperative world. Please, next slide. So the workers buyout is an instrument, is a tool whereby the workers of a company acquire the ownership and the control of the same company that has been facing closure. So we rely to this kind of tool in terms of crisis for many reasons, and also in case of general turnover. So that are the employees who try to save the company by creating this cooperative, keeping the jobs, keeping the know-how and all the competencies acquired over the years, and much more that will help investments and assets on the territory, which is extremely important in terms of resilience. So what they do is they use their employment benefits and shocks absorber to constitute the capital, the social capital of the new cooperative. So in order to give a new strategic objectives, a new corporate governance, and fulfill the lack of let's say competencies that always very often you have in case of general turnover. Next slide, please. So that particular tool had a particular boost after the crisis 2008, because the territory had to guarantee the protection of companies that have entered in those years industrial crisis, but also generational transition. It's important to underline that the European Commission too is focusing a lot on generational transition as an instrument for resilience. So what does Lega Coop do? So companies get in touch with Lega Coop, and that their role is to perform business analysis and risk analysis, find the financial support instruments for the new company, look for innovations needs, and also look for reskilling and upskilling needs in the company. They put that under stress test to be sure that for the first 3 years they be able to go on and work properly, and of course they define a new business plan. This is particularly important, this assessments procedure, because you have to analyze what went wrong and find out how you can then manage the new governance and the new perspective. So next slide, please. Of course, there are some resources needed not for Legacup to carry on their activities with their offices and their network of professionals, but for the company itself, the new cooperative itself. So social shocks absorbers and employment benefits can be used to build a social capital, and you have the CUP fund resources. The CUP fund is a mutual fund by the cooperative system that can put resources into that, and national funds especially shaped to support the capital of the new enterprises. And evidence we do have evidence of success, of course. You can read that in the presentation, but the most important thing is I want to underline is the value of this. So they are qualified operations because you keep the jobs. The workers of the company become entrepreneurs, become partners. And so this gives a special value to this kind of operation. People who have worked in the company, people who know the company, that are reskilled and upskilled in order to acquire new competencies. So that social value is for a territory very important. Briefly, next slide. Of course, we do have other good practices on the territory, which are very important. You can look for them on our Interreg Europe website for the project. And I'm just mentioning, of course, in this slide, the challenges encountered, which I think are particularly interesting within the partnership, and to also get contributions from other partners and how to improve and exchange experiences of that. First of all, and I'm just stop, when you intervene to face a social crisis, an industrial crisis, at which moment, and also how you build new competencies and bring innovation to overcome the crisis. Thank you very much for the attention, and we're open to questions.
Very good. Thank you very, very much, Frida. We'll just move on now to our next slide, which will just have so we have our presenters' images up there and our Q&A slide. So we'll move to those questions, and the first one is actually for Phil. So there's a couple of them, Phil, actually, but one of them is, what is the biggest concern coming from businesses that were contacted, and what kind of concrete support have they asked for outside of actual monetary support? So were there things that they were asking for that weren't money based? So
yeah, for sure. Thanks, John. Thanks for the question. Well, one of the biggest issues they face clearly is the drop off in sales, and that's been dramatic for many businesses. So outside of direct financial support, a broad range of areas. I mean, one connected to financial is about helping with business planning and cash flow forecasting and resilience planning, and that's been quite critical for businesses who haven't had the knowledge or wherewithal to develop those aspects so that they can in turn apply for funding and finance. Another one that's coming out in quite a key way is helping to understand things like employment law and development of skills across existing teams to move them into new areas, because a key aspect of businesses coming back and the resilience they need to show will be to understand that markets may have changed, to understand that clients may need different things in different ways, and therefore it's important that they can upskill staff or repurpose staff, if you will, and they've been asking for help with that, amongst other things.
That's great. That's great. There's actually another question that probably follows on from the questions we had for our presenters in the first round. But in terms of how did you contact those 11,000 businesses who hadn't engaged with the council previously, and how did you get their contact details? And that question's from anonymous. It's not for me, but maybe you get a chance
in fairness, we purchased some business SME data. We've assessed it, we've reviewed it, we've assessed it against our own database of the 20,000 businesses or so that we have worked with over the last 7 or 8 years, and we purposefully made a decision, as I said in the presentation, not to focus on businesses we have supported, and they continue to engage with us, but to reach out to those who don't know about the good work that's done across Greater Manchester through the support services, to basically, you know, reach out a hand and say there are specialists with knowledge and experience here who can help you. You know, it's fully funded. It's funded by European Regional Development Fund and by the combined authorities of Greater Manchester. So it was really just we bought some data, as you would expect us to do. We understood it, we cleansed it, and we were reaching out to businesses, any business, if you will, that might need support, and we were just, you know, offering, you know, a helping hand.
That's great. That's superb. Just for all of our presenters that are all online with us still, there is questions in the Q&A that we mightn't get to. So I'll pose the questions that I can get to before we run out of time. But for some of our presenters, maybe in the first cohort of presenters, maybe there's some questions there that you can actually reply to. I would ask that you just keep your microphones muted so we don't hear the click clack of the keyboard. But we'll move on. Our next question is for Inga. It's from Francesca in Reggio Emilia, and she's wondering that now that the lockdown is over, how many of the shops or the companies that you are supporting are still using the eShop platform, and is the model going to be supported by your organization outside of the emergency sort of situations? Is it the support that you're going to continue into the future? So 2 questions there for you, Inga. Over to you.
Yes, almost 3. Thank you, John, and thank you for the question from our audience. That's right. That it seems that everything is over up to now, let's say like that. But we still are keeping all our e-shops on our platform, and we have some reasons, and I'm going to say it in short. First of all, we made a survey right after 3 months of the quarantine, and we discovered that already 30% of our population knows the platform. That means that customers, they are coming to our platform to buy. And this is the good value proposition for e-shops to stay on the platform. And also we are providing, as I said, mentoring and online webinar support to all the time to be successful on the internet. That means that there are things why e-shop should stay on our platform. And you know, we looked at the statistics, and we saw that 40%, almost 40% of our population still not buying on the internet. And this is the big potential that we need to, you know, to elaborate and to bring to our also platform, to use it and to look for the future. So, as I said during my presentation, the next challenge is to keep our platform on alive, as also to bring all the time updated value proposition for e-shops, and you know, to be ready for any emergency in the future. And because no quarantine on the internet, and all the world is turning on the internet, and even we are today on the same platform to be together. So hope I answered the question. If any question could come again, I am ready to answer it from email or any other contact.
Thank you very much for that, Inga. So our next question is from Adrian, and it's from Rita in Italy, who's actually on the call with us as well, but she's using the Q&A function. So Adrian, she's wondering, I suppose, how you were able to play your coordinated role, and were you using sort of pre-existing tools or improving or creating new ones to connect with those that were in trouble with the crisis?
Thank you, John. We are a relatively new city management, winning the elections only last October. And the previous city management was not so active in this field, which means that we have started to build this kind of relationships with a coordinative role from our side in the beginning of this year. It follows that fortunately we had an active and I can say also a fruitful relationship with most of the important stakeholders in our city when the pandemic situation has started. And after that, we were able to build on that strong foundation and improve it continuously through online and also sometimes personal meetings. By the exploration of their needs, and we could exploit this opportunity for mutual trust building. So I'm truly hopeful that we could absolutely continue to play this coordinative role in the future as well.
Very good.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I'll keep moving here for the moment, and we'll come back to you. So there's a question for Rita from Regina in Hungary, and she's wondering about, in the case of generational change, what is the ownership ratio of the companies, and are they mainly domestic-owned companies that are supported?
Okay,
So,
John, can you? I don't see the questions. Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
No problem. So it's from Regina in Hungary, yes. And she's wondering, in the case of generational change, what is the ownership ratio of the companies, and are they mainly domestically owned companies?
Domestically owned company, you mean
are they Italian, local Italian firms that are supported?
Yes, yes. So basically it works that way. So Lega Cup is a national, of course, business association of the cooperative world, and they do have a national level, they do have a regional level, and they do have local level. So in particularly, we were working together with Lega Coop Emilia Ovest, which covers 3 provinces, so our province and the other 2 neighboring provinces, and that is important to be as close as possible to the territory. So that work on companies that are close to their core business. So basically, although there might be regional funds involved, national funds involved, but the entering point, so to say, is the local Lega Coop system, which then can, of course, use all also the regional national competences if needed. But the idea is that you have to be so close as possible to the territory, because you know the territory, you might know the market, you might know the companies, and you might know also the workers, the values, and so on of that specific territory. So, of course, I put some ideas on the target of companies that we might have in terms of prices, or also in terms of generational turnover, and which is a target that usually works with this kind of instrument in among 8 or 20 employees that then might take over the company. And so that's, I hope this answers the question.
Okay, perfect. And there's actually another question here for you that while you're live, we might as well ask you. So it's from George, who's from Youghal in Cork, and it's great to see that the internet is working down there. But he's asking, Rita, how difficult was it to create a new management structure among the co-op members then?
Well, it is a challenge. Of course, one of the main challenge and one of the main also tasks of Lega Coop is to assess this. Of course, you have to turn employees and workers into entrepreneur, which all we know at partnership level that it might not be so easy. And on the other side, you also have to turn them into partners of the new cooperative, which, I mean, building a cooperative, of course, has its own challenges, but at the same time, of course, as opportunities and its own values, of course. So you have to put people together really. You also evaluate their passion, their determination, because of course it takes something more, I would say, that gives the added value of building a cooperative out of workers of a company.
Very good, very good. There's because we're getting short on time, folks, there's one more question here that I have for Inga. It's from Kevin in Cork, and he's wondering, did you provide financial assistance to the businesses to get them online, as well as the advice and the platform? So he's mentioning that in Ireland, we're providing grants of up to 2,500 for micro enterprises to get them trading online. The current demand for those grants is extremely strong and indicative of a permanent shift by businesses to a dual sort of online and traditional offering. So he's just wondering, did you provide financial assistance to the businesses to get them online, as well as that, you know, the platform and the advice side of things? So
thank you very much for the question. The answer is very short. Actually, no, we did not provide financial support, but because we decided to work through the soft program and providing the support, mentoring and assistance, and also to look for the partners to bring some special offers for e-businesses. That means big discounts or some free services. So that could be, you know, the different way to help enterprises to save money. Hope I answered. Thank you very much.
Very good. And I think I have Kevin's contact details anyway, so I'm happy to put him in touch afterwards if he wants to drop another comment up there. Okay, so due to time constraints, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to the next slide, but for our presenters, please do feel free to answer any of those questions in the published Q&As. You can just hit reply and you can answer those there and now, so our attendees can see them. But just to move on to our next slide, so in terms of, I suppose, the next steps for the foundation project, so our primary source of information sharing is our website, and we add to that then, I suppose, with Twitter as well. So it's important if you want to stay up to date, that's the primary way, I suppose, that we get our information out to people through the site. So we'll be publishing a lot of different things up there. We have a project newsletter that focuses on, I suppose, supports for businesses, how industry can become more resilient, how sectors can become more resilient, how clusters are becoming more resilient, and we're sharing stories from predominantly, I suppose, our partner regions, but elsewhere across Europe as well. So if you haven't had a chance to sign up for that newsletter, it arrives every 2 weeks. You can sign up for it on the top right-hand side of our website, or if you follow us on Twitter, you'll find the link to do that as well. But every second Thursday morning, we have one of those newsletters that goes live, and I suppose our next newsletter is due on Thursday week, the 9th of July. So if you sign up before then, we're going to have a story about each of the good practices that you've heard this morning. So we'll be converting those slides into a news article, and all of those will be shared with within that sort of newsletter. So we'll move on to our next slide. The next, I suppose, things are changing for us, and we have a number of different sort of forthcoming workshops and seminars, and we're not really sure whether we're going to be able to meet face to face in September in Poland at this point, but if we do, I think things are changing, and we'll have to change with them. So it's important for us to be able to host sort of webinars like this, and to make those presentations that we maybe as a partnership group see locally in a particular region, to make them available to a larger audience. So hopefully we'll be able to do that either live or I suppose after the fact, you know, and publish them on our website for anyone who isn't able to join us on those. But again, keep having a look on our website, keep looking at our tweets, etc., and hopefully we'll get the messages out on how you can join those events. The other way is to become a local stakeholder for the partner that's based in your region. So all of the contact details for our local partners are are on the website under the contact section, and you can reach out to them and get involved in the project, and perhaps potentially then we could bring you with us on one of those trips. So if you're Irish and on this call and want to come to Poland, Italy, Hungary, Austria, Finland or Lithuania with us and the foundation project, feel free to reach out to me and we'll talk through that in the forthcoming months. So on to our next slide. One of the next big things we have that we're going to publish, I suppose, as a consortium, which is probably maybe 6 months away at this stage, is the regional analysis piece. So each of our regions is looking at pulling together, I suppose, our experiences in terms of how our industries and sectors have transitioned in our local regions in the past, and how those changes, moving from different maybe traditional manufacturing sectors to more digitalization, etc., how those have changed in the past, and how we can use those learnings to transition into the future. So that's a new piece, I suppose, where we'll have information from each of our different regional areas, and we'll be able to understand more and learn from each other in terms of helping to support the development of our own action plans. In terms of our next slide then, I suppose I just want to say a few thank yous to some of our partners who've been absolutely fantastic in terms of the support and ensuring that this webinar can take place. So each of them have worked with their own local stakeholders to bring the right good practices that can help your regions all across Europe and globally to implement maybe some of these policies, initiatives or programs. So they've all been working diligently on that. In terms of those that maybe deserve a special mention, to Dex and Judith in particular for all our help in terms of the management and communications for the webinar, for looking after our Q&A today, to Oldham Council and CEIC for their help and support in terms of the communications on Twitter and getting the stories out there, and to all our partners, I suppose, for sharing this webinar and the registration links with their stakeholders and making sure we had such a large audience with us this morning. So our next slide is just to thank, I suppose, the team here in CIT. They've been instrumental, I suppose, in putting this together, in helping with the testing and pre-testing that happened with this. To Clina, for our producer, for her help and support today, making sure that we that everything transitioned well and everything ran faultlessly. To Anne, in terms of the registrations and support for helping that process and the marketing. To Owen, Jamie, Connor, Yvonne and Joseph on the pre-testing, communications and just general support in the background. And finally, a huge thank you to Irene and Steve, our IT team. We actually did a run through of this webinar last week and we're only able to get 6 out of our 9 presenters online. It was absolutely car crash TV, so I'm glad you didn't see that one, and hopefully this has been much more informative and beneficial to you as attendees, because we managed to get everyone online today, which is superb. So thanks Irene and Steve for that. We really appreciate the support. And on to our final slide then. So in terms of, I suppose, the biggest thanks of all goes to our presenters for giving up their time, their effort, their patience in terms of waiting for us with this particular software and making sure they could all get online. We've learned a lot about hosting webinars, and that should extend to us in the future in terms of the foundation project and sharing more messages with you, our audience, who deserve another thank you. So without you guys, there would be no webinar, because we'd just be talking to ourselves and on a regular video call. So thanks very, very much for tuning in and for your support. I hope you've picked up a couple of different things from this webinar. And also, I suppose, if there are colleagues and other people who you think might be interested in it, we have recorded the webinar, and I'll be making it available to all of those who signed up via Eventbrite, sending you an email with a link to our website where we'll post the video and a PDF copy of all of the presenter slides. So the last thing I'll say is just that I hope you all have a great weekend. Stay safe, and we look forward to talking to you all again soon. Okay, thank you very, very much.